I'm Samantha Mitchell, 32, once the strategic backbone of Mitchell Enterprises, the tech consulting firm my parents built from nothing. Growing up in our sprawling Connecticut estate, I believed hard work trumped everything, until my younger sister Heather was handed the CEO position I'd earned through years of dedication and results. What my parents never expected was how quickly their empire would crumble without me. Before I continue this journey of betrayal and vindication, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Your support means everything as I share my truth. Mitchell Enterprises wasn't always the industry powerhouse it eventually became. My parents, Thomas and Karen Mitchell, started the tech consulting firm in our garage 35 years ago with nothing but a shared vision and relentless work ethic. Dad handled the technical side with his computer engineering background, while Mom managed client relationships with her natural charisma and business instinct. Their complementary skills created the perfect foundation for success in the emerging tech consulting space of the late 80s. I grew up watching their late nights, overhearing strategy discussions at the dinner table, and witnessing their sacrifice firsthand. By the time I was 10, the company had grown to 50 employees and moved into its first real office space in downtown Hartford. By 15, we had regional offices across the Northeast and over 200 employees. The Mitchell name had become synonymous with innovative tech solutions and impeccable customer service. Education was paramount in our household. From kindergarten, excellence wasn't requested, it was expected. I graduated high school as valedictorian, earned my undergraduate business degree from Yale summa cum laude, and completed my MBA at Wharton with specializations in strategic management and organizational leadership. During summers, I interned at Google, McKinsey, and Goldman Sachs, building an impressive resume and network before I even turned 25. My sister Heather, for years younger, had a different approach to life. While I buried myself in textbooks and case studies, she cultivated social connections and pursued marketing with a focus on brand development. She graduated with a respectable but unremarkable GPA from NYU's marketing program. Where I was analytical and detail-oriented, Heather was creative and spontaneous. Our parents, particularly Mom, always seemed charmed by Heather's natural ability to work a room, while my achievements were acknowledged with simple nods and that's what we expected. The pattern started early. When I brought home perfect test scores, Dad would briefly look up from his newspaper with a quick, "Good job, Sam." But when Heather managed a B+ after nearly failing, there would be celebrations and her artwork would earn prime refrigerator real estate. My science fair victories were nice accomplishments, while Heather's participation ribbons in dance recitals were framed and displayed prominently in the living room. Despite this imbalance, I never resented Heather growing up. We were different people with different strengths, and I genuinely believed that in the professional world, results would speak for themselves. After completing my MBA, I received multiple offers from Fortune 500 companies, but chose to join Mitchell Enterprises. It wasn't just family loyalty. I truly believed in the company's potential and wanted to help take it to the next level. From day one, I approached my role with the same intensity I'd applied to my education. I didn't expect special treatment as the founder's daughter. In fact, I worked twice as hard to prove myself worthy on merit alone. I started in business development, quickly identifying inefficiencies in our proposal process that were causing us to lose potential clients. Within 6 months, I had streamlined the system, reducing turnaround time by 40% and increasing our success rate by 25%. By my second year, I had secured 3 major clients that collectively increased annual revenue by $12 million. I introduced data-driven decision-making across departments, modernized our approach to market analysis, and developed strategic partnerships that positioned us ahead of emerging industry trends. The respect I earned among colleagues wasn't handed to me. It was built through consistent results and a willingness to roll up my sleeves alongside them. Jason Reynolds, our operations director, who had been with the company since its early days, became my mentor and strongest advocate. In 20 years with this company, He told me after I successfully managed a critical system overhaul. I've never seen anyone with your combination of analytical precision and big-picture thinking. Coming from Jason, whose approval was notoriously difficult to earn, this validation meant everything. Meanwhile, Heather joined the company's marketing department after graduating and spending 2 years at a small advertising agency. She brought fresh ideas for our brand image and created engaging social media campaigns that increased our visibility. Her work was solid, if not revolutionary. And she quickly became a favorite among the creative team for her enthusiastic approach and willingness to socialize after hours. As we approached the company's 35th anniversary, my parents began dropping hints about their retirement plans. At family dinners, they would casually mention succession planning and the future leadership of Mitchell Enterprises. Given my track record of quantifiable success and the respect I'd earned throughout the organization, I believed I was the natural choice to eventually step into a leadership role. Employees at all levels came to me for guidance, executives sought my input on major decisions, and our largest clients specifically requested my involvement in their projects. I didn't take anything for granted, though. I prepared detailed 5-year and 10-year strategic plans for the company, identifying growth opportunities and potential challenges. I invested in leadership training and executive coaching to strengthen my management skills. I was ready to earn the position through merit, not birthright. Little did I know that in the Mitchell family, bloodlines and parental favoritism would ultimately trump business sense and proven results. The evening that changed everything was deceptively ordinary at first. Mom had invited Heather and me to their house for a special family dinner. Given the recent retirement conversations, I suspected this might be when they'd outline the succession plan formally. I arrived early, bringing a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet and a folder containing my latest analysis of industry projections. Always prepared, always professional. Our family home still impressed visitors with its colonial architecture and manicured grounds, but to me, it represented the culmination of my parents' hard work, the same work ethic I had inherited and applied throughout my career. The familiar scent of Mom's rosemary roasted chicken filled the air as I entered, finding Dad already pouring drinks in the living room. "There's my serious girl," he said, handing me a glass of scotch. Always on time. Heather arrived 20 minutes late, breezing in with an armful of peonies and excuses about traffic. Mom embraced her like she'd returned from war rather than the 30-minute drive from her downtown apartment. "These are gorgeous, sweetie." "Thomas, look what Heather brought us," Mom gushed, arranging the flowers in her favorite crystal vase, the one I'd given her 2 Christmases ago. Dinner progressed with the usual family banter until Dad cleared his throat during dessert. "Your mother and I have made some decisions about the future of Mitchell Enterprises," he announced, reaching for Mom's hand across the table. My heart quickened. After 8 years of proven success at the company, countless late nights, sacrificed weekends, and measurable results, this was the moment I'd been working toward. "As you know, we're not getting any younger," Mom continued. "It's time to think about the next generation of leadership." Dad nodded, looking between us. "We've given this extensive thought and discussed it with the board. Leadership requires not just technical knowledge, but also natural charisma and people skills." A small knot formed in my stomach. "Therefore," he continued, "we've decided that Heather will be stepping into the CEO position over the next 6 months as we transition to advisory roles." The words hit me like physical blows. Heather, CEO, transition. Each syllable echoed in my head as I struggled to maintain my composure. I finally managed. Looking between my parents' expectant faces and Heather's poorly concealed smile. "Now, Sam," Mom interjected, "I know you're surprised. But when we really analyzed what the company needs going forward, Heather's leadership style and vision aligned perfectly with our values." "My leadership style?" I repeated, still processing. "You mean the leadership style that brought in $27 million in new business last year? The vision that modernized our entire operational structure?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "You've done excellent work, Samantha. Your analytical skills are unmatched. But leadership is about more than spreadsheets and efficiency metrics. It's about inspiring people. Heather added with practiced humility. Building relationships. Creating a positive company culture. And you think I don't do those things? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Of course you do, honey, Mom said quickly. You're just more behind the scenes. Heather has natural charisma. People are drawn to her. People respect results, I countered. And my teams have consistently outperformed every other division. Heather reached across the table, touching my hand with theatrical sympathy. I'll need your expertise, Sam. We'll be a team. Like always. I withdrew my hand, fighting to keep my voice steady. A team where you'll have final authority despite having a fraction of my experience and no proven track record in executive leadership. Samantha. Dad's voice carried that warning tone from childhood. This decision wasn't made lightly. The board agrees that Heather's fresh perspective is what Mitchell Enterprises needs moving forward. The mention of the board, comprised mostly of my parents' golf buddies and college friends, only heightened my sense of betrayal. This wasn't a business decision. It was family politics disguised as corporate strategy. Brian Cooper, our CFO who had been with the company for 20 years, had expressed concerns about succession planning during our last quarterly review. Whoever takes over needs to understand the financial infrastructure you've built, he told me. It's become the backbone of our operational success. Clearly, his input had been ignored along with objective performance metrics. I made it through the remainder of dinner on autopilot, nodding at appropriate intervals while my mind raced. After dessert, I asked to speak with my parents privately, hoping reason might prevail without Heather's presence. In Dad's wood-paneled study, I laid out my case methodically. I've dedicated my entire career to Mitchell Enterprises. Every major client we've acquired in the past 5 years has come through my division. Our profit margins have increased by 32% since I restructured operations. Mom sighed. Numbers again, Samantha. This is exactly what we're talking about. Business is about people. Not just performance indicators. People whose livelihoods depend on sound business decisions, I countered. Decisions based on experience and proven results, not personality contests. Dad's expression hardened. Our decision is final. If you can't support your sister in this transition, perhaps you should reconsider your position with the company. The implied threat hung in the air between us. For the first time, I seriously considered what life might look like outside the family business, outside the family expectations that had shaped my entire existence. That night, lying awake at 3 a.m, I texted my best friend Allison Taylor. They're giving Heather the CEO position. Over me. After everything. Her response came immediately, suggesting she was also awake. What? That's insane. Are you okay? Need me to come over? I didn't respond right away, staring at the ceiling as the full weight of the situation settled over me. My entire identity had been built around Mitchell Enterprises, being the responsible daughter, the high achiever, the one who would eventually lead the company to new heights. Now that foundation was crumbling beneath me, and I wasn't sure what would remain when the dust settled. The staff meeting where my parents officially announced Heather's promotion was excruciating. I sat at the conference table, maintaining a professional facade while feeling countless eyes darting between me and my beaming sister. The shock in the room was palpable, quiet gasps and exchanged glances that spoke volumes about what everyone was thinking but couldn't say. As Heather transitions into her new role, Mom explained to the executive team, she'll be shadowing each department to gain comprehensive understanding of our operations. Dad added, Samantha will of course be instrumental in ensuring a smooth transition, sharing her expertise as Heather takes the reins. Jason Reynolds, my mentor, caught my eye from across the table with a look of disbelief. Brian Cooper, our CFO, cleared his throat awkwardly before asking, what will Samantha's role be moving forward? An uncomfortable silence followed before Dad responded, Samantha will continue leading her division while taking on special projects as needed. Special projects. The corporate equivalent of being put out to pasture. After the meeting, colleagues approached me with sympathetic expressions and supportive words. This is temporary, Sam, whispered Laura Simmons from HR, Everyone knows who really drives results around here. Within days, Heather settled into the corner office that had been prepared for her, directly adjacent to our parents' offices, of course. She wasted no time making her presence felt, scheduling endless vision meetings and culture sessions that pulled people away from actual work. During her first executive committee meeting, Heather presented a company rebranding initiative that was essentially a repackaged version of the strategic plan I'd proposed 6 months earlier. "We need to position ourselves as thought leaders in emerging tech," she announced, using my exact phrasing while avoiding eye contact with me. "Samantha suggested something very similar last quarter," Jason pointed out. "I believe we have her detailed implementation plan in the shared drive." Heather smiled tightly. "Yes, but this approach emphasizes relationship building rather than just metrics. It's more holistic." I bit my tongue, recognizing the coded language that dismissed my work while appropriating it. The pattern continued over the following weeks, with Heather taking credit for successful initiatives I'd spearheaded while characterizing my methodical approach as rigid and outdated. The real trouble began when Maxwell Industries, a potential client I'd been courting for months, finally agreed to hear our pitch for their digital transformation project. Worth over $1 million, the Maxwell contract would not only be financially significant, but would position us strategically in an emerging market sector. "I'll handle the Maxwell presentation," Heather announced during our Monday planning meeting. As the face of Mitchell Enterprises, I should establish the relationship from the beginning. "Maxwell has very specific technical requirements," I cautioned. "I've spent months researching their infrastructure and developing customized solutions for their legacy systems." Heather waved dismissively. "You can brief me on the technical details. Martin Wilson and I have a mutual connection through the Downtown Business Association. It's all about building rapport." Martin Wilson, Maxwell's CEO, was known for his no-nonsense approach and technical background. He valued substance over style and had specifically requested detailed technical proposals from all competing firms. "Martin expects comprehensive technical specifications," I insisted. "His team will be evaluating our proposal based on implementation feasibility, not personal connections." "That's your problem, Sam," Heather sighed, addressing the room rather than me. "Always underestimating the human element in business. Trust me on this one." Later that afternoon, I overheard my parents in the break room, unaware of my presence around the corner. "Heather's bringing such fresh energy to the leadership team," Mom was saying. "The staff seems really invigorated." Dad agreed. "If only Samantha would adjust her attitude. This resistance isn't helping anyone. She's always been difficult when things don't go exactly her way," Mom replied. "Remember how she refused to participate in family photos after Heather won that school award?" I felt my cheeks burn at the mischaracterization. I had been absent from those photos because I was competing in the state math championship, which I won, bringing home a trophy that still sat forgotten in the hall closet. The isolation grew as Heather systematically restructured teams and communication channels. My direct reports were reassigned to collaborative pods under different leadership. My involvement in strategic planning was reduced to submitting written reports rather than participating in decision-making meetings. Client relationships I'd nurtured for years were transferred to account managers who reported directly to Heather. The breaking point came when I discovered Heather had scheduled a private lunch with the procurement team from Westfield Systems, our largest client, whose contract renewal I had personally secured 3 times. These were people I'd worked closely with for years, understanding their unique challenges and building solutions around their specific needs. "The Westfield relationship needs a refresh," Heather explained when confronted. "They're used to dealing with you, but they need to get comfortable with the new leadership structure. Their contract is up for renewal in 4 months," I reminded her. "This is exactly the wrong time to disrupt the relationship. Or exactly the right time to strengthen it," she countered with a condescending smile. "Don't worry so much, Sam. I've got this under control." That evening, I sat alone in my office long after everyone had gone home, staring at the performance metrics on my monitor. Every graph showed the same story: consistent growth, innovation, and results from my leadership. And none of it mattered in the face of family politics and favoritism. For the first time, I allowed myself to seriously consider whether Mitchell Enterprises was where I belonged anymore. I barely made it through my front door before the tears came. Collapsing onto my sofa, I finally released the frustration, anger, and hurt I'd been professionally containing for weeks. My apartment, minimalist and organized, much like my approach to work, had always been my sanctuary from the chaos of corporate life. Now it felt like an empty reminder of how completely I'd dedicated myself to a company that didn't value my contributions. After crying until I was physically exhausted, I called Allison. Our friendship had endured since college precisely because she never sugar-coated the truth. I can't do this anymore, Ally, I confessed, my voice hoarse. Every day is another humiliation. Another reminder that my work means nothing compared to being the favorite daughter. Then don't do it anymore, she replied simply. Sam, you're brilliant, driven, and respected throughout the industry. Mitchell Enterprises doesn't define you. But it's been my whole life, I whispered. Everything I've worked for was leading to this. No, Allison corrected firmly. Everything you've worked for has given you skills, experience, and a reputation for excellence. Those belong to you, not to your family company. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet, my natural response to any complex problem. In one column, I listed reasons to stay: family loyalty, familiarity, the hope that Heather might fail and my parents would recognize their mistake. In the other column, reasons to leave: professional dignity, mental health, potential for growth elsewhere, freedom from family dynamics. By morning, the decision had crystallized. I needed to speak with Jason. We met at a coffee shop several blocks from the office, where we wouldn't be overheard by colleagues. I've been expecting this conversation, Jason said before I could even begin. And before you ask, yes, it's as bad as you think. The executive team is walking on eggshells, afraid to contradict Heather because of her direct line to your parents. 3 department heads have updated their LinkedIn profiles in the past week. I stared into my untouched coffee. Do you think I'm being selfish if I leave? Jason's expression softened. Samantha, I've watched you put that company first for 8 years. You've sacrificed weekends, relationships, and your own well-being for Mitchell Enterprises. There's nothing selfish about recognizing when a situation has become untenable. What about my teams? The projects I've started? Good leadership means knowing when to step away, he said gently. Your teams have been trained well. They'll carry on your methodologies. As for projects, he hesitated. I don't think Heather intends to continue most of your initiatives anyway. That evening, I drafted my resignation letter. Professional, concise, with no hint of the emotional turmoil behind it. I scheduled a meeting with my parents for the following morning, determined to maintain my composure regardless of their reaction. They were already in the conference room when I arrived, looking mildly annoyed at the early meeting request. What's so urgent, Samantha? Dad asked, checking his watch. Heather has the executive committee meeting at 9. Without preamble, I handed each of them a copy of my resignation letter. I'm giving my standard 2 weeks' notice, though I'm willing to extend to 30 days to ensure proper knowledge transfer. They stared at the letters, momentarily speechless. Mom recovered first. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic because you didn't get your way. This isn't about getting my way, I replied evenly. This is about recognizing that my professional growth is no longer possible here. Dad's face reddened. After everything we've done for you? The opportunities we've given you. I've earned every position I've held through measurable results, I countered. And I've contributed significantly to the company's growth and profitability. That's not something you gave me. This proves exactly what we've been saying, Mom snapped. You lack the emotional intelligence required for leadership. Everything is numbers and metrics with you. I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. I've made my decision. I'll prepare transition documents for all my current projects and brief whoever you assign to take them over. News traveled fast. By lunchtime, Heather cornered me in the break room. Her expression a practiced mix of concern and disappointment. You can't seriously be leaving, she said, loudly enough for nearby staff to hear. We're family. Mitchell Enterprises is our legacy. It's your legacy now, I replied quietly. I wish you success with it. Is this really because I got the CEO position? She pressed, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because I told Mom and Dad we could create a co-president structure if that would make you happy. The belated offer, which I suspected was never seriously considered, only reinforced my decision. This isn't about titles, Heather. It's about recognizing when it's time to build something new. My exit interview with Laura from HR was painfully honest. After confirming that our conversation was confidential, I shared my concerns about the direction of the company without directly criticizing my family. You know how valued you are here, Laura said, her expression troubled. Several department heads have already approached me with concerns about your departure. Change is inevitable in any organization, I replied diplomatically. Mitchell Enterprises will adapt. Will it? She asked softly. My final day arrived with surprising emotional clarity. I spent the morning transferring files, explaining complex client histories to my replacements, and saying goodbye to colleagues who had become friends. Jason helped me carry the few personal items from my office, awards, certificates, and the small collection of thank you notes from team members that I'd kept over the years. Your parents are making a catastrophic mistake, he said as we loaded the last box into my car. Maybe, I acknowledged, but it's their mistake to make. As I handed in my security badge at reception, I caught a glimpse of my parents watching from the second-floor window. For a moment, I thought Dad might come down, might say something to acknowledge 8 years of dedication. He didn't. Walking out those doors for the last time, I felt a complex mixture of grief and liberation. The chapter 1 had expected to define my entire professional story was ending, but perhaps that meant a new one I would write entirely for myself, was about to begin. The first week after leaving Mitchell Enterprises was disorienting. For 8 years, my identity had been inextricably linked to the family business, Samantha Mitchell, Strategic Director, daughter of the founders. Now, I was just Samantha, unemployed and uncertain. I found myself waking at 5:30 a.m. out of habit, reaching for my phone to check emails that no longer required my attention. The structure that had defined my days was suddenly gone, leaving an emptiness that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Allison proved invaluable during this transition. You need a complete reset, she insisted, helping me hunt for a new apartment across town. New place, new start. Away from any reminders of Mitchell Enterprises. I found a modern loft in an up-and-coming neighborhood, the opposite of my former meticulously organized condo near company headquarters. The industrial space with exposed brick and massive windows represented the freedom I now had to reinvent myself. Jason remained a steadfast supporter, checking in regularly and offering references without my having to ask. 3 companies have already contacted me about you, he reported during one of our weekly coffees. Word's getting around that Mitchell's strategic genius is on the market. Other former colleagues reached out too, some seeking job opportunities if I joined a new firm. Others simply expressing support. Brian Cooper, the CFO, took me to lunch and confirmed my worst suspicions about the company's direction under Heather's leadership. The Maxwell deal is shaky, he confided. Heather keeps rescheduling meetings with their team, prioritizing cosmetic rebranding initiatives instead of technical preparations. I appreciated his candor, but steered the conversation elsewhere. I was determined not to become the bitter ex-employee obsessing over her former company's missteps. As predicted, competitors began circling. I received calls from 3 of Mitchell's biggest rivals within weeks of my departure, each offering executive positions with substantial compensation packages. The validation was gratifying, but something held me back from accepting. Why am I hesitating? I asked Dr. Rachel Wilson during one of our therapy sessions. After years of putting my mental health on the back burner, I'd finally prioritized finding professional support for processing my family dynamics. Perhaps because joining a competitor would still be reacting to Mitchell Enterprises rather than truly defining your own path, she suggested. You'd be positioning yourself in opposition to your family rather than independently of them. Her insight resonated deeply. For too long, I'd allowed my parents' expectations and Heather's favoritism to define my choices, even if that definition came through resistance or competition. True independence would mean building something based entirely on my own vision. The idea of starting my own consulting firm had been percolating since my departure. I had the expertise, industry recognition, and now the motivation to create something aligned with my values. What I lacked was the confidence to step completely away from the security of established organizations. What's the worst that could happen? Allison challenged when I shared my fears. You fail and have to take one of those cushy executive offers? That's one hell of a safety net, Sam. She was right. With renewed determination, I began drafting a business plan for Mitchell Free Consulting, a working title that made us both laugh. Though I later settled on Precision Strategy Partners. I secured a small business loan using my condo as collateral, found affordable office space in a co-working environment, and began the process of establishing my brand. The early days were humbling. After years of having an administrative team, marketing department, and IT support at my disposal, I was suddenly ordering my own office supplies, building my own website, and handling my own scheduling. Each small task was both a reminder of what I'd left behind and confirmation that I was building something authentically mine. My first clients were smaller companies unable to afford Mitchell Enterprises' premium rates, a local software developer needing strategic direction, a family-owned manufacturing company struggling with digital transformation. The projects weren't glamorous, but they allowed me to implement my methodologies without corporate constraints. And the results spoke for themselves. Word spread quickly. By the end of my third month, I had hired 2 consultants to help manage the growing client list. By month 6, I had a team of 5 and had moved to a dedicated office space. The freedom to select clients, approaches, and team members based solely on merit rather than politics was intoxicating. Then came the day I ran into Martin Wilson, CEO of Maxwell Industries, at an industry conference. I had intentionally avoided checking in on the Mitchell-Maxwell deal, not wanting to measure my success against my family's potential failure. Martin spotted me across the exhibition hall and made a deliberate path toward me. "Samantha Mitchell," he said, extending his hand. "I've been hoping to run into you. Your absence was noted at our recent meetings with Mitchell Enterprises." I maintained a professional smile. "I've started my own consulting firm. It's been an exciting transition." "So I've heard," he nodded. "Your reputation precedes you, especially regarding technical implementations like the one we're considering." The conversation continued pleasantly until Martin lowered his voice. "Off the record, I have concerns about the current direction of our discussions with Mitchell. The initial presentations were promising, but recent meetings have lacked the technical depth we require for a project of this scale." I felt a complex surge of emotions, vindication mixed with genuine concern for the company that still employed many people I respected. "I'm sure they're working to address any gaps," I offered diplomatically. Martin studied me carefully. "Would you be willing to give me your honest assessment of whether Mitchell Enterprises can deliver what we need? Not as a Mitchell, but as an industry expert who understands our requirements." The question presented an ethical dilemma I hadn't anticipated. I excused myself, promising to call him the following day after careful consideration. That night, I wrestled with conflicting loyalties to the company that had been my home for 8 years, to the colleagues who remained there, and to my own professional integrity. After careful consideration, I called Martin Wilson the following morning. "I can offer my professional assessment based on industry standards and my knowledge of your requirements," I told him. "But I won't disparage my former company or reveal proprietary information." "That's all I'm asking for," Martin assured me. "Your reputation for integrity is part of why I value your opinion." We met at his office, where I reviewed Maxwell's requirements specification document, information that was publicly shared with all vendors bidding on the project. Based on these requirements, I outlined what a successful implementation would require: specific technical expertise, dedicated resources, and a realistic timeline. Without commenting on any particular vendor, I concluded, I would ensure that whoever you select can demonstrate proven experience with legacy system integration and has a dedicated technical team available for the full project duration. Martin nodded thoughtfully. That aligns with my concerns. Recent meetings have focused heavily on branding and relationship building, with technical questions repeatedly deferred. I maintained my neutral expression, though internally I recognized Heather's approach immediately. 2 days later, Jason called. The Maxwell presentation was a disaster, he reported. Heather insisted on leading it despite the technical focus. When their CTO started asking detailed questions about implementation methodology, she kept deferring to the team will figure it out approach. Martin Wilson literally closed his notebook halfway through. I felt a pang of sympathy for the team who had undoubtedly prepared materials that Heather had chosen not to present. I'm sorry to hear that. It's a significant opportunity. It's worse than that, Jason continued. Brian ran the numbers. Without the Maxwell contract, we'll miss quarterly projections by 20%. The board is asking questions your parents don't have good answers for. I thanked Jason for the update but refrained from further comment. While part of me felt vindicated, another part genuinely regretted the impact on employees who depended on the company's success. The call from my father came 3 days later. His voice lacked its usual authoritative tone. Samantha, we need to talk. About Maxwell Industries. What about them? I asked neutrally. They've walked away from the deal. Martin Wilson specifically cited concerns about our technical implementation capabilities. He paused. Capabilities you built. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, echoing my response to Jason. Don't be coy, Samantha. We know you spoke with Martin. I took a deep breath. Martin approached me at an industry event. I provided general guidance on technical requirements without referencing Mitchell Enterprises specifically. We need you to talk to him, Dad continued as if I hadn't spoken. Convince him to reconsider. The request was so presumptuous that I almost laughed. I'm not in a position to influence Maxwell's decision-making. Their concerns are based on their assessment of what Mitchell Enterprises presented. This is still your family's company, he reminded me, a hint of the old authority returning to his voice. A fact that didn't seem relevant when decisions about its leadership were made, I replied evenly. After several more attempts to persuade me, he finally said what I suspected was the real purpose of his call, your mother, and I would like you to come to dinner on Friday. To discuss possibilities. I agreed. More out of curiosity than obligation. Friday evening found me back at the family home, the scene of the dinner that had set everything in motion months ago. This time, I arrived with the calm confidence of someone whose worth was no longer tied to family approval. Heather was noticeably subdued, offering a perfunctory hug before retreating to help Mom in the kitchen. Dad attempted small talk about my new venture, his questions revealing how little he actually knew about what I'd built. It wasn't until dinner was served that Mom broached the real subject. We've been doing some thinking, Samantha, about your role in the company. Former role, I corrected gently. That's just it, Dad interjected. We believe there's a place for you back at Mitchell Enterprises. A significant place. I set down my fork. What exactly are you proposing? Co-CEO, Mom said, as if offering a tremendous concession. You and Heather working together. Your technical expertise paired with her people skills. The offer might have been tempting months ago, before I had experienced the freedom of building something on my own terms. Now it felt like too little too late. That's not possible, I replied. I have my own company now, with clients who depend on me. We're talking about your family legacy, Dad emphasized. Surely these small contracts can be passed to someone else. His dismissal of my achievement ignited a familiar frustration. My small contracts have generated more revenue in 6 months than Mitchell Enterprises' new business development has in the last 2 quarters, I stated, watching their expression shift. I'm not interested in returning to an environment where my contributions are consistently undervalued. Heather, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. This is ridiculous. We offer you equal leadership and you're still not satisfied. What do you want, Sam? For me to step down completely? I don't want anything from Mitchell Enterprises, I replied honestly. I've built something I'm proud of, something that reflects my values and standards. I'm willing to provide limited consulting to help with the technical gaps, but I won't be returning as an employee. After everything we've given you, Mom began, her voice rising. Karen, Dad interrupted, surprising us all. Perhaps we should listen to what Samantha is actually saying, rather than what we want to hear. The acknowledgement, small as it was, created the first crack in the defensive wall I'd built around my heart. The dinner ended earlier than planned, with tentative agreement that I would provide 10 hours of consulting per month to help address the technical shortcomings that had cost them the Maxwell deal. As I was leaving, Dad walked me to my car. "You've built something impressive," he said quietly. "I've been following your company's progress more closely than you might think." The simple acknowledgement meant more than I wanted to admit. "Thank you." "I made a mistake," he continued, the admission clearly difficult for him. "We all did," putting Heather in a position she wasn't ready for. I nodded, unwilling to verbally absolve him but appreciating the rare moment of candor. As I drove away, I realized I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because of any vindication in my family's struggles, but because I had finally stood firmly in my own worth, independent of their validation or approval. 6 months after that uncomfortable family dinner, Precision Strategy Partners had blossomed into a respected boutique consulting firm with 15 employees and a waiting list of clients. I had deliberately built a company culture that valued results and innovation while maintaining work-life balance, the antithesis of the grueling expectations I'd experienced at Mitchell Enterprises. Our office space, once a single room in a co-working facility, now occupied half a floor in a renovated industrial building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, and collaborative spaces designed for both focused work and creative brainstorming reflected my belief that the best strategic thinking requires both structure and freedom. My team included several former Mitchell employees who had reached out after my departure. Daniel Chin, who had led technical implementation under my direction at Mitchell, was now my operations director. Laura Simmons had surprised everyone, including herself, by leaving her 20-year position as HR director to join my growing firm. "I realized I wanted to be part of building something authentic," she explained when accepting my offer. The irony wasn't lost on me when Martin Wilson called to discuss the project Mitchell Enterprises had failed to secure. "We've decided to break the digital transformation into smaller phases," he explained. "Would Precision Strategy be interested in handling the technical infrastructure portion?" The contract, worth just over $1 million, would be the largest in my company's short history. After thorough discussion with my leadership team about capacity and capabilities, I accepted the opportunity. "I want to be transparent," I told Martin during our contract signing. "I'm providing limited consulting to Mitchell Enterprises on technical matters. While there's no direct conflict with this project, I want to ensure you're comfortable with that arrangement." Martin appreciated the disclosure, and we established clear boundaries to prevent any concerns. The professional integrity that had always guided my work continued to be the foundation of my new venture. My relationship with my family had evolved into something I wouldn't have recognized a year earlier. The monthly consulting hours I'd agreed to provide created a structured, professional context for interaction that was actually healthier than our previous dynamics. Rather than emotionally charged family dinners, we now had focused meetings with clear agendas and boundaries. Heather's initial hostility had gradually shifted to grudging respect as she recognized the challenges of leadership. Under pressure from the board following several significant setbacks, she had been forced to develop actual management skills rather than relying on charm and parental favoritism. "How do you decide which clients to take on?" she asked during one of our consulting sessions, a genuine question rather than a challenge. "I assess whether their needs align with our expertise, if the project allows for meaningful impact, and if the client relationship seems built on mutual respect," I explained. "It's not just about revenue potential." She nodded thoughtfully. "We've been chasing any large contract without considering if we're the right fit. It's exhausting and not particularly effective." These small moments of authentic connection didn't erase the past hurt, But they created possibility for a new type of relationship, one based on professional respect rather than family obligation. My parents had undergone their own evolution. Dad, in particular, had made efforts to understand my new business, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about my strategic approach or leadership philosophy. Mom remained more distant, though I sensed her discomfort stemmed partly from recognizing the favoritism she had always shown Heather. During a family dinner that was now a monthly rather than weekly occurrence, Dad raised his glass in an unexpected toast to Samantha, who had the courage to create her own path. Mitchell Enterprises is better for your influence, even from a distance. The acknowledgement, inconceivable a year ago, reflected how far we had all come. My personal growth had perhaps been the most significant. Dr. Wilson had helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation through achievement, patterns established in childhood that had driven my relentless work ethic, but also left me vulnerable to the pain of having that work undervalued. Success isn't just what you build externally, she reminded me during our now bi-weekly sessions. It's also building a life that honors your values and nurtures your well-being. Taking her words to heart, I had established boundaries that would have been unimaginable during my Mitchell years. I took actual weekends off. I pursued interests outside of work, joining a hiking group and taking cooking classes. I dated without evaluating potential partners primarily on their career ambitions or strategic thinking. The growth of my company brought its own challenges. As we expanded, I found myself facing decisions about scaling, culture maintenance, and leadership development that tested my vision and values. Unlike at Mitchell Enterprises, however, I approached these challenges with confidence in my ability to build something authentic and sustainable. When Allison asked if I ever regretted walking away from the family business, my answer came without hesitation, not for a moment. Mitchell Enterprises gave me skills and experience, but leaving gave me myself. The greatest vindication wasn't in my company's success or Mitchell's struggles, it was in recognizing that I no longer needed vindication at all. My worth wasn't determined by my parents' approval, Heather's comparison, or even my business achievements. It came from living authentically and building something that reflected my values. As I look toward the future, I see endless possibilities for growth, not just for my company, but for myself as a leader and person. The journey from family expectation to self-determination wasn't easy, but it led me exactly where I needed to be. If you've ever had to walk away from something that once defined you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What gave you the courage to make that leap? Did you face family pressure like I did? Remember to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need encouragement to value themselves even when others don't. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find the courage to create your own path, wherever it might lead.